Now here's some instructions for a sleeve. With smaller size needles, so obviously this pattern has indicated that you use 2 different size needles in your project. A lot of times the ribbing will be done on a smaller size needle, and then before you begin to work the regular body of the sleeve, you'll have to change to the larger size needle. So with smaller size needle, cast on, and then we have this whole slew of numbers here. And what this is for, it at the beginning of your pattern, it's told you that, you know, maybe this represents a size 36, a size 38, a 40, and the numbers keep going up. It's representative of different sizes, and it'll be in the same order. These numbers will always be in the same section. And if you run across this, and let's just say you were knitting the 4th size in, so if this was a 36, 38, 40, let's say you were knitting a 42. You could go in here and you could highlight those numbers, or you could draw circles around them every time you saw a bunch of numbers like that, so it would be easier to find, and you wouldn't get, you know, mixed up and maybe accidentally do a 50, cast on 58. So that's indicative of the sizes, and they want you to cast on a different number of stitches for each size, and then work in garter stitch for 13 or 11 rows. Now the 13 is for this first set of parentheses, and the 11 is for the second set of parentheses. Now if you watched the video that was I think it was the knit that had the garter stitch in it, I can't remember if I talked about it or not, about the right side and the wrong side of a cast on, and whether or not you would know whether or not to knit or purl. They're right here. They're just saying work in garter stitch, and you know that you can either knit all your stitches or purl all your stitches to get garter stitch. So they're not saying beginning with a knit row or beginning with a purl row, so you get to choose. And depending on your cast on, if you have one of those cast ons like a long tail cast on that actually starts you out where your first row is a wrong side row, you might have to work 14 rows or 12 rows, or you might make the choice to work 12 rows or 10 rows, because you're going to want to end up on a right side row more than likely. So now here we come up to the change to larger size needle that I was talking about earlier. Now here we go, beginning with a knit row, work 4, 6 rows, that's for your sizes again, in stockinette stitch. So you're on the right side row, they want you to work in stockinette stitch, and they want you to begin with a knit row. This is going to help you up here to know what you need to do. It's not going to matter if you add a row or you subtract a row, but it's still going to help you figure out which is the right side of the sleeve. Increase, this is just a row, increase, knit across, increase. Now they're not indicating what the increase is here. Maybe in the front of the book it tells you what they're calling an increase. If they're not, then they're going to allow you to use your own kind of increase. There's not that many increases, so I mean, you could probably use a make one if you wanted. If it were me, I'd probably use a knit in the front and the back. So we increase into the first stitch, and then we knit across and to the last stitch, and then we increase at the end. And this is telling us how many stitches we should have now. And we've done 2 increases, so it should be 2 more, if I typed it in right. It should be 2 more stitches. And then the next little bit says continue to increase 1 stitch at each edge. Now you already increased a stitch at each edge, so it's telling you to continue to increase 1 stitch at each edge, but they want you to do that every 4 rows for this first batch of sizes and every 6 rows for this second batch of sizes. And I'm going to come back and refer to this because you may think, that is nuts, I will never remember how to do that. I'm going to show you a way to keep up with that. And then it tells you how many times to do it for a particular size. So you're going to do it that many times more than this. So if we just look at this, it would be 12 times total, 7 times total, 6 times, 14 times, 13 times. And then at the end, when it's all over with, when all of these increases have been done, this is the amount of stitches that you should have for any given size there. So hopefully you've gone in there and you've circled your little number and you know which one it is. Now, the next thing says work even. Work even means don't do any decreases and don't do any increases. You're going to be working, and the sleeve has been angling out for a while, and now you're just going to work it straight up and down. So there's not going to be any increases on either side. And if you were working in pattern, if you had some kind of pattern, lace pattern, or cable pattern or whatever, it would probably say work even, maintaining pattern, or maintaining pattern, work even until sleeve measures approximately. And I didn't even bother to put any inches in here because that's pretty self-explanatory. From the cast on edge, you know where your cast on edge is, so you measure from that lowest edge, and you want it to measure that many inches or until desired length to underarm. So they're saying, they're giving you a recommended amount to work your sleeves, or if you're like me and you've got super short arms, you might not want to work your sleeves to be that long. But it's going to be to my underarm, so I know that it has to be from my underarm down to my wrist. And then, when you make the next one, you want to make sure that you make it the same length. And then they want you to end by working a purl row. They're telling you that for a reason. They're not telling you that for their health. So end by working a purl row. I don't think I've got anything else after that. That's probably because after that they're probably be going to have you start doing some bind offs or something like that for sleeve shaping, or you may be doing a actual sleeve cap or something like that. So that's going to cover a lot of the stuff that you're going to see in instructions. Now, I mentioned that I would come back and show you a little bit about how to keep up with that part. Let me get rid of that. That part where it said decrease every 4 to 6 rows so many times. Well, if you want to, you can do this on just like a pad and paper, and you can just write it out. This is a sweater that I'm working on right now, and I'm using this, and I know I'm going to be making the same sweater 2 more times, so I did it up on my computer, and that way I could print it out again and do a lot of marking off and stuff. And I actually had to just redo this. That's why there's nothing marked off, because I had all my stitch counts wrong. I just had it all screwed up. So what I've done is, one of the main reasons that I did this is you can see that my row numbers don't match up with my lace numbers. She's given me a lace pattern in the instructions, and so I need to know what lace pattern I'm following on which row that I'm on, and I kept getting confused and wanting to do like lace row 3 on row 3, and so I had to do something to help me keep up with that. And so I've indicated which lace row I'm working on any given row. And I'm also telling myself if it's a decrease row or not. Because this wouldn't necessarily be that big of a deal on this one, because it would be every other row, but I had to change the depth of my armholes, and so then I was no longer doing it every other row. I was doing it every fourth row, and I just knew I would not keep track of that. So I had to come in there and write it down, and you can see I've got BH written in here. And that's for a buttonhole. I have to work a buttonhole on that row. I got so excited when I started the sweater, I forgot this buttonhole. I had it marked over here, and so I missed this one, and when I redid my page, I went back and I added it in red at the beginning, so hopefully I will see that, and when I come up to my next buttonhole, hopefully I won't miss it. I would lay money down that I will forget to do a buttonhole at some point in time. But, you know, that's just some of the things you can do to help yourself out. And I've got all my stitch counts here. She didn't give me any stitch counts in the rows because of the ways that she had it written. And, you know, I don't like to rip out. So I wanted to know how many stitches I was going to have so I could go back and count them. So that's just a little bit of an example of something that you can do to help yourself keep track of all of that. There's no shame in doing this. I have worked with a lot of great knitters, and everybody needs help keeping track, even the good ones, and I don't include myself in that group.